Mr. Schwarzenegger, how are you? It's good to have you on the show.
This is really a treat.
I'm fantastic. I'm watching you streaming here, and then I figured I'd call in because, you're talking about the Red Heat movie. And I remember making this movie with Belushi, and there's fantastic times. And I wanted to call in and see, what your thoughts are on the movie, because, as you know, it's a fantastic movie.
Well, yeah, it definitely is.
I love this movie, Mr. Schwarzenegger, and it is an honor to have you call into our humble little show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for these kind words, dear. And it's fantastic that you're reminding the people of these movies that they're making of back in the 80s when everybody's knowing me as the biggest star out there.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, now I guess you're sort of...
Yeah, he's on a resurgence, is he not? You're making a comeback, if you will, Mr. Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
I
you
don't
got a
think
new
I
film
ever went
coming out.
anywhere.
What is it called? It's called The Escape Plan?
Yes.
The newest movie, you're talking about the newest movie that was Stallone?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the one you did with Stallone. You're not getting senile over there, are you?
These days I'm doing so many movies, and between being the former governor and then having these love childs all over it's hard to keep up track with these things that are going on.
You were married to a beautiful woman and who apparently loved you, but you found yourself shacking up with somebody that's, well, let's just say she wasn't a 10. What was the thought process there, buddy?
This is not my favorite topic to talk about here, but, I'll tell you what happened. Maria's gone away for 2 or 3 days, and, I got to the point where I felt like I was going to explode, and, the first thing that they could find, and this is what's there, and that's what I took. And the next thing you know, there's some problems, but, things worked out in the end.
I also hear that you're up to Terminator 5. That there's more than rumors about this happening. So, what can you tell us about Terminator 5? Aren't you getting a little bit old to play Terminator?
I don't know where his sources are coming from here, but this is nothing I can talk about yet.
So, explain, how is a Terminator model going to suddenly age 30 years?
Because, this is up to the writers, but from what I'm told here, that the metal on the inside it doesn't age, but the skin on the outside it ages. And just like me, I age too. Because not as much as the other guys, but
Well, that's right.
Well, what I'm most curious to know, Mr. Schwarzenegger, who's your favorite action star that's out today?
You mean besides myself?
Yes, of course, besides yourself,
Yes.
Mr. Schwarzenegger.
Then let me give me a rundown of the top 3, 4. What are you thinking of, and I'll tell you if I like them
The
or not.
kid from Twilight, what's his name?
No. I'm going to say The Rock.
The Rock is
Jason
fantastic. I love The Rock.
Statham.
I'm going to all these movies all the time. I see them at least 2, 3, 4 times each.
I think that maybe one of the highlights for me was your stellar performance in Batman and Robin. I was wondering what preparation you had to prepare for Mr. Freeze.
It's a good question you're asking there, Dave. What I did was I spent a few hours every day in the meat locker in the local deli, and I prepared like this, and I was getting colder and colder every day, and this way I could really get into the Mr. Freeze. And so I think with when I'm saying everybody freeze, it came across in the character, and the people appreciated it.
So will you be running for president, Mr. Schwarzenegger? There's always been that rumor.
Well, this is I don't know if this is the right forum for this type of. Could we talk politics here? This is the movies. This is the movies show you got here going.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wish you luck. Because I'm sure you'll be just as good of a president as you are an actor.
That's right. And the first thing is to start to go for the governor perhaps again, and then from there
You
the
mean
president.
presidentator.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking. It's fantastic. And let me ask you, can I count in your vote?
Oh, hell
Absolutely,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let me tell you, fellas, it's been a great time talking to you. I'm going to go right back to watching the web stream here, and I hope your viewers appreciated how much of a great job you guys are doing.
Well,
Thank
you very much,
Mr. Schwarzenegger. How many damn film festivals have you been on already? It's enough, man. I mean, how many people have to compliment you before you finally decide you've had enough?
Well, I've had enough myself, honestly. Not that I wouldn't say no to more, but I'm so grateful for what we've been able to achieve so far that, I'm happy.
Now, I remember you saying that it was adapted from a book. A lot of times when it was like, the book was not published, right? It was sort of like a friend's book.
It was a self-published book, and I work at the company that self-published it. So I do video marketing for that company, and I always need book covers to use in the promotional materials. And his was a black, dark-looking cover with huge block letters and a skull on it, which was so different from all the self-help and inspirational stuff we usually publish that it stood out, and I noticed it. Took it on the galley, read it, fell in love with it, looked him up on the internet, called him, he said yes. Awesome.
And how is your screenplay? Did you adapt the screenplay, or was that someone else who did?
Todd and I both adapted the screenplay together, and I would say just about 90-something% of it is right out of the book. It's really faithful. I wanted to try and make it as cinematic as possible. So I wanted really, really close-up shots and really wide as much as possible. And that kind of goes back to Sergio Leone's style of extreme close-ups and big vistas. I like that. That's where cinema is at, I think, in that juxtaposition. But other than just keeping that in mind while we were filming, I wasn't really consciously...
You weren't looking for it, you were just kind of following your instincts.
Yeah, but when other people have said there's some Spielberg stuff in there, sure, I can't deny that because I grew up on all these Spielberg movies.
Now you are disturbed as hell, by the way, because there are things in this film. I watched people in the audience leave at like 2 or 3 specific points. It's like I literally saw a migration of like 5 people at one point, 5 people at another point. It was a big theater, and I understand why, but wow. All I'll tell the audience, because I want to intrigue you, is really, Scott, that really? And you got away with it because I think the stuff I'm referring to is the movie within a movie. So it's not like this was part of the narrative. This was a kid reacting to some of the most unbelievable violence perpetrated to a dead body. Violation. And I'm not faulting you, but what would you say the justification? Because I love the way it was shot. You had the reflection on the kid's eyes and the protagonist's eyes. What would you say the justification for having something so horrific and horrible? You know exactly what I'm talking about, Scott.
Well, first it's just my gut. I wanted to do it, and so screw it. We did it. I don't think we toned it down very much either in that part of the movie. But if I was going to try and justify it beyond just I wanted to, I would say that it's all relegated. All the really horrific, gory, graphic violence is relegated to that portion of the movie because we don't see very much of it in the climax of the film. It's all off screen for the most part. And I think it's more palatable to see that kind of stuff played out in an exploitation horror movie within the movie than to actually see it played out with our characters.
Hey Francis, I would love to hear a little about yourself, how you got involved in sci-fi, and obviously this book that's been available, that's on Amazon. The title is very Isaac Asimov to me.
That's actually one of the nicest compliments someone can say about anything related to my work. One of the other works that I'm writing, actually this month, anyone who's a fiction writer, a lot of fiction writers right now know that we're in the middle of what we call NaNoWriMo. This is National Novel Writing Month, where there's a challenge to write a 50,000-word novel in the space of 30 days. And so...
How many words a day is that?
That's 1,666 words a day.
You have mapped this out. That or your Rain Man. What is your favorite short story in that compilation?
The one I really like the best is the first one in the book. It is called A Time Travel Story. And I wrote that so after thinking a little bit about my dad, who he had passed away 2 years ago. And I had this kind of thought, and I think I might have even posted it on Facebook, that I should, go study time travel so I could go back in time and warn him about his illness. And it was kind of like an off-color joke. But then I actually started thinking, well, if I went back in time, how would he believe me that I was really there back in time, knocking on his door and saying, hey, you should go to the doctor right now. And then I thought, well, maybe I don't need to send me as a person back in time, but just a message. And then the same thing. Well, if you send a message back in time, how would someone know? Would you be able to discern if a message showed up in your email, is that a message or is it spam? And so that story came out of that, and I really really enjoyed writing that. My dad was very supportive of my desire to write, and he was a big science fiction fan. He was a humongous Robert Heinlein fan and as like Isaac Asimov fan, and he's the reason I was exposed to all of that growing up, and Star Trek, and everything, science and science fiction.
So your father was really the influence of your geekiness? Father's the reason why you're the nerd you are today?
To some degree, yep, he has to take some credit for that, yes.
Why didn't he name you Uhura? Tell us a little bit about your character in the Caesar and Otto films.
Well, in Caesar and Otto, I am Drew, a really affable, nice guy who has really unfortunate luck. He gets his arms just cut off many times between the couple of movies. The arms keep growing back,
It's not that they grow back. It's just that we have good doctors.
Sorry about my raspiness. I've had a cold for a few days. It's kind of taking its toll on my voice.
Just say you're a crack addict. It's going to add to the allure. Like, sorry about the congestion. I'm just using lots of crack.
I only do crack when I'm hammered. I might have done crack during one of my many drunken binges.
That'll get you elected in Canada.
My main focus is music, but I definitely I'm going to try to do more acting work. I'm not going to limit myself to anything. I mean, I'm open playing a big fat woman. I'm going to be honest about acting. I'm still learning it. I'm still learning the craft.
I know you rewatched Deadly Xmas a night or two ago.
This is a work of art, and I really mean that because it's chock full. I mean, it's crammed with references and things you have to figure out, and it's hard for those movies to find an audience, but when they do, it ends up being a cult phenomenon. This Christmas one is just jam-packed with enough gags for like 3 movies.
Paul, a.k.a. Anna, we shot a lot of this film in your apartment. These films have pretty much been shot in your neck of the woods, man.
We did a lot of stuff in my apartment.
Pretty much, the first film we shot was like 75% in your apartment. It's basically when you're making a micro-budget film, you only shoot the places you can have access to, that around the sneak. And, you're my friend from here, you moved out to LA, and you're so inviting that how could I, that's the one place we know we won't get kicked out of when we shoot these movies.
I might get kicked out, but I don't know how neighbors didn't complain.
Right, we shot a scene. There was so much blood and screaming in the scene we did from Deadly Xmas.
Remember how loud the blood machine was?
Everything about that. We set the damn alarm off in your apartment. There's a scene in Deadly Xmas that basically we massacre you. Evil Santa comes in and whips out a chainsaw and is screaming and yelling. We're shooting this 1 in the morning. Your neighbors, granted they might have been completely stoned, were amazing because they never complained once.
Well, that hallway does smell like pot, pretty much.
Good. That is the kind of neighbors.
Terrifying that they didn't call the cops. I would be a
what's
little
funny,
worried
Dave?
that there was no reaction.
Dave, what's funny is I've gotten my neighbor has come over and told me to turn the music down when it wasn't even that loud. But this machine spewing blood at 1 in the morning, she had no problem with it.
And you screaming at the same time? Because you're screaming at the top of
Maybe
your
that
lungs.
was what they were hoping for all along.
So like, oh, thank God, he's finally getting murdered. We can get a new. Oh, you were faking it, son of a.
Massacre good, Led Zeppelin bad.
The world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, InRavio can get your message out there. And we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is InRavio.com. InRavio.com wants you. InRavio provides the best in TV, film, post-production, and so much more. And we're growing. Right now, we're looking for a team of pros that can join us. So what are you waiting for? We need show hosts, production crew, marketing gurus, sales experts, audio engineers, lighting, visual effects, and camera crews. We want you. Go to InRavio.com/join the team. For over 60 years, Hanson Carpet has put the customer first, providing only the finest quality products and service. And Hanson Carpet is so much more than just carpet. We also carry a wide selection of window blinds and shades, and our licensed and insured technicians can service any of your flooring or window covering needs. Browse our huge selection of laminate, carpet, linoleum, vinyl, and tile. Stop by our showroom today or visit HansonCarpet.com. No matter what your project, Hanson Carpet has got you covered.
Transmission of lice occurs from being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Like catching a cold or a flu.
You have guaranteed peace of mind in every bottle of Got Lice because all of our products are completely natural.
And organic.
But strong enough to cover all your lice removal needs while being safe and effective. Our professional technicians are specially trained with our exclusive proven technique to successfully comb out head lice. We come right to your home at your convenience.
Whenever you want us.
We bring everything needed to perform a successful and complete comb out while eliminating your head lice. And we leave you with our exclusive complimentary products to use for the next 10 days following our treatment.
For free.
Our technicians also check all family members who have been exposed to lice. Please visit us on our website today at gotlice.co or feel free to call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 646-257-0121.
How would you describe what the Montauk Project was?
When I read the book, I thought it was just ridiculous. You know, I didn't think it was possible. Just because of the way it was presented in the book, I just didn't buy it. It looked like a joke to me. So years later, after I was done with horror business, you know, somebody suggested that I do a movie on Montauk. And so I reviewed the book again, and I said, you know, what I am interested in is the fact that there are real people out there telling this story. You know, there are actually people out there saying that this happened, and that was the most fascinating thing to me. So I wanted to meet those guys and start there, and that's what I did. Because reading those books isn't exactly research. Research, you have hard evidence to back it up. So the research for me was making this film.
In trying to wrap my head around with what the Montauk experiment actually was is where it gets a little bit tricky because it's involved. And it's fascinating. I don't know whether I believe it. Maybe, but then again, I don't necessarily disprove it. I mean, maybe 25% of it's real. Maybe 90% of it's real. Maybe zero. But it's just what's being proposed is mind-boggling. So, as far as the key people that you were talking to, what was the objective of the Montauk Project?
Well, there were many. They claim, obviously we can't prove it, but we're going on the explanation of many people now that claim they were part of it. What they say this was partially an extension of partially the Philadelphia experiment, if you recall what that is. That was an experiment that was meant to, on the USS Eldridge, it was meant to create a ship that would be invisible to radar, and apparently Tesla was involved in this, and that by mistake, maybe, that this actually created an invisible ship where men were fused inside the ship and people died and disappeared. And so they say that some of this technology was brought to one of the many bases, which was the base at Camp Hero underneath Montauk, partially. The other part was alien contact and reverse engineering of their technology. And another thing was experiments on kidnapped children and runaway children to create psychic soldiers, to create Manchurian candidates, and to develop mind control that would eventually, and apparently according to these men, are being used on us right now.
And the theory by the people that you talk to, is that the government that we believe to be is not the government that actually is? Is that what they say?
Well, I mean, if you do your research, it starts to get scary. And this is one of the points I bring up in the film, is that at first I thought this was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And then if you start to peel back layers like an archaeologist, like not just listening and not filling your head with conjecture, but actually doing research, you start to find some credibility in this stuff. That's where it gets really scary, because most of us won't even touch it.
Right.
We'll easily say, hey, this is stupid, but hold on, it's stupid to think half the things that are in reality.
What puts you into the maybe column? Like what that you came across pushed you over?
I start to take, the basic food groups that this whole Montauk tale is made of. Psychic ability, alien contact, mind control, time travel. Okay, and then we start to break these things up in separate events and look back and find credible witnesses, evidence to all of these things. I mean, the CIA has used people for remote viewing, so somebody of intelligence believes in psychic abilities. I know it exists personally. I'm sure all of you feel it, because we all have it. I mean, we've had experiences where it wasn't, it's indisputably psychic. Like we might not have control over it, but we have it. Okay, and then the other thing is the fact that in the Milky Way galaxy alone, billions and billions of solar systems, we've already determined this. Okay, so what's the probability that at least in one of those billions of solar systems, on one of those planets, there is intelligent life, maybe more intelligent and technologically advanced than we are?
Now, I'm looking up at the image right there. I mean, was that filmed in Montauk? Was that a recreation?
No, I was right there. I mean, we hopped the fence and shot this beautiful shot with a wide-angle lens.
We talk about guerrilla filmmaking. So this isn't exactly a documentary, and this isn't a narrative. It's somewhere in the middle. Like, as I described it, the men who built America.
Yeah, well, I feel documentary filmmaking filmmaking in general is still not fully explored. And documentary filmmaking, we can do so much with it. So I just wanted to try something a little different. And basically what you have is, it is a documentary, but we have a running movie throughout.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi. Hi, Dave.
Hey.
Welcome.
So now you
Hey, everybody.
are a filmmaker and a film critic.
Correct.
Right? So as a film critic, how do you rate your own movie? Because I know you're completely impartial.
Completely impartial, and it's the best thing ever made.
I thought, yeah, I saw it. I thought so too. Actually, so your film was called Cluster.
Right.
And it is if I perceive it right, it is a metaphor on migraines. You experience migraines?
Yeah, I have since I was probably like 15 or 16. I've had cluster, tension, and migraine headaches, and that's kind of what it's about.
What the F does cluster mean? See, I'm a non-migraine suffering person.
Get on
so I'm not
Wikipedia and just look up the word cluster headaches.
I'm doing a show. I can't look it up. What is
Okay,
cluster
so a
headache?
cluster headache is nicknamed a suicide headache because so many people kill themselves because of how bad they hurt. It's actually women that have been through childbirth say that it hurts worse than giving birth to a kid.
To this, so you don't have to give birth as a man. You know what it feels like. You're not
Well,
missing
I don't
anything,
say
you
I know what it feels like, but it hurt. You know, the headaches hurt, and supposedly they hurt worse than giving birth. I don't know. Luckily, nothing's ever come out down there, so we'll you know.
What is...
That'll be the next film.
Hey,
Oh, she has Final Fantasy VII hair.
Hey, guys.
Now you got involved. You're doing a lot of horror films now. You got involved with film. How?
Through Trauma, through Lloyd. I met Lloyd and started working for Trauma for conventions, and he kind of just
Sexually harassed you.
pushed me along, and you should do this. I always had wanted to, but I didn't know that it was a possibility for someone who lived where I live. I am extremely nervous. I'm an extremely nervous person in front of a camera.
This might be the wrong profession for you then, huh?
I mean,
But look at you, what are you talking about? Look, we have this picture of you up in the corner, dropping completely unfettered emotionally. You love the damn camera, you liar. Look at you with the Trauma tank top on, holding spray cans in your hands. You're not afraid of the camera, you freaking liar. You make a hell of an impression for someone who's basically just breaking in. A lot of people talk about you. A lot of people are impressed by you. Yeah, maybe it's just the hair. You know, the hair makes you stand. I'm just teasing. It's the talent. Yeah, and the hair. Ellie, did you watch Wolverine? Like I told you to. Okay, now give us your 1-minute review on Wolverine.
Oh God. Okay, well I'm going to tell you this. I did not watch the last 15 minutes because.
You bastard! I told you to watch it all week long.
I know.
She couldn't deal. She couldn't do
I
it.
haven't watched it in 2 days. I've been working so much, but.
It only takes 2 hours. Before we go.
I want to touch your hair.
Oh, your hand disappeared, man.
Oh, wait.
Where did it go?
I feel the power.
You absorb into her head. Look, I'm telling you.
Fun with green screen.
Okay, wait. Oh, wait. You had a pen in your nose. I can't believe it. Okay.
This place is run by children.
Where can people find you? On Facebook.
Facebook. Oh yeah, big time. I'm a big time Facebook girl. Ellie Church on Facebook.
Right on, girl. Black power. We'll see you soon. We'll see you next time.
All right, see ya.
I say that to the whitest person of all time. Now, your filmography, it just reads like a nerd's dream. How did you get exactly become part of the animated world, writing scripts for so many shows, anything from Beetlejuice, Pink Panther, X-Men, Iron Man, Gargoyles? How did one cartoon lead to another?
I had been writing for a very long time, as many writers in Hollywood do, without finding work. And it was one of those circumstances where a friend of mine said, hey, they're looking for writers right now at Disney TV Animation. That was on a show called, that was not Goof Troop, it was Bonkers at the time. And somebody said, hey, they're looking for writers over here. Are you interested? I said, sure, I'll come in and pitch. That led to an assignment. In that world, in the animation world, it has been like this for a long time where one tends to lead to another. If you're a decent writer and they like you and you get along with people and you deliver on time and the work is not total mess, it does lead to more work.
You set the bar very low. So long as you just show up and you give them words and you're not unconscious to slap people around, you get hired for more work. Which of the shows that you've been involved with, I mean, RoboCop even, were you the biggest fanboy of?
Well, I had been writing a long time, but I certainly was a fan of the X-Men when I wrote my X-Men script. But later, it took a while to get there, but when I finally started working for Warner Brothers, that was a really big deal to me because I've always been a big Warner Brothers fan. And when I wrote Lunatics Unleashed, I kind of knew I'd arrived after, 16, 17 years of writing when I could write, What's Up, Doc? And I taught Putty Tat. I did taught Putty Tat. I knew that was something. But certainly when you go back to the hardcore boy stuff, it's got to be X-Men, Iron Man, those shows.
Now, how exactly Jekyll and Hyde the musical, we all at this table know what that is. I mean, how did you get involved? Did it start with you? Did it end with you? I mean, as far as the writing is concerned, how did that all come about? Because that's you're talking Broadway now versus animated shows.
Yeah, that's right. Although, isn't it interesting that though that's my big Broadway, the big Broadway title that I have, it too is in the fantasy, in the Nerdgasm world. Jekyll and Hyde certainly in there. The answer is that when I was when I graduated from USC with a degree in the theater 120 years ago, just after the Civil War, and
I think you might be exaggerating just a little bit by a century.
Anyway, I had met Frank Wildhorn at USC, and he and I got together and started chatting about various shows. He and I had written a couple of different shows that will never see the light of day prior to starting on Jekyll and Hyde. It was literally a couple of years after Stephen Sondheim had written Sweeney Todd, and it was on the boards, and Frank and I were looking for what could we do that's in the Gothic horror vein. That was really intrigued us both. And so we looked at Phantom of the Opera 6-7 years before Andrew Lloyd Webber came out with his. We talked about that for a while. We looked at Dracula, we looked at Frankenstein, we looked at The Wolfman, and what we realized is that Robert Louis Stevenson's book, which most people think they know but really don't, because that book is a very thin novella. It's only 100 pages long, and there are no women in it. There's no love story in it. There's not really a plot in that book to hang a story on. And so we realized that it did lend itself to this notion of one man who's two with two different female characters, one for Jekyll, one for Hyde, and it lent itself to that naturally, and that's where we started.
And I'm sure it must have become a dream come true when you finally got to work with David Hasselhoff.
I'd really like to know what it was like working for Disney. I'm a big Disney fanatic.
For Disney?
Yeah.
Disney's an interesting experience. Almost everybody that goes in there goes in with pixie dust in their eyes. Just about everybody. You go, oh my God, I'm at Disney. And after you're there for a little while, I know all of you have had the experience of working at a job. It becomes a job. It's really a great experience in this way. When Disney has a problem, they throw money at it. So you always get solutions to whatever the problems are. You're not hurting for those solutions because there's no funding for it.
In my circle of friends, I was probably one of the only fans of the Batman, and I know you wrote the episode with Superman in it. I was just wondering what it was like working on that.
So that particular episode, my friend Alan Burnett, who's a producer at Warner Brothers, been a producer there a long time, and one of the great writers of animation of all time, he invited me in to do the episode. He wrote part one, I wrote part two.
Oh, okay.
And so he sort of set it up. He teed it up, and I, hit it down the fairway. That's how that works frequently in that business. Sometimes you generate your own work. Sometimes they come to you. It's always a really grand thing when somebody says to you, hey, we've got a story. Would you come write it? Yeah, I'll do that. That's a lot easier than me thinking it up.
And lastly, do you ever hear when you're dealing, you hand a script off to the producer, Superman wouldn't say that, or Batman wouldn't say that? You ever get that note back?
Absolutely. It's somewhat amusing when that happens when you're writing a known character. But it's even more amusing when everyone in the room is working on a brand new show and no one knows the characters and someone says that character wouldn't say that.
Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I can hardly hear you.
Okay, we'll talk really loudly.
All right, great.
I'll be like your grandparents. Hi, Joe.
Hi,
Okay,
I can hear
okay.
you better there when you yell.
Now, one of the things I really liked about your film is the, your lead actor was fairly unconventional as an action hero. I guess maybe a little inspired by Simon Pegg in Shaun of the Dead. So
Yeah.
how did you find this guy?
Well, I went to college in Iowa area, and he became my roommate. So and he was going into theater, and it was just happenstance that we became roommates. And
So the criteria for getting that role was sharing a room with you. You got your start on Return of the Jedi. Now, how does a kid, you were like probably just turning 20, how exactly did you get involved in this film?
I was attending UCLA Theater and Film School, and I got an opportunity to get in the door sweeping the shop at the creature department at Lucasfilm, or Industrial Light and Magic. And so I literally started by moving crates of creatures around and sweeping the floors and cleaning up the shop. And then they suddenly needed someone to make Ewok feet. So that was my first real job in the industry. I made Ewok feet.
So somehow they saw the artistry in the way that you were sweeping the floors, and are like, we like the way that guy moves his hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, and from there, you were visiting set like a couple weeks? You were pretty much on set for a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I made a bunch of Ewok feet, and then someone had to deliver them to the set, and so I threw a bunch of Ewok feet into the trunk of my car, and drove to Northern California near Eureka, where they were filming up in the redwood forests on some private land up there, and so I stayed on and became an Ewok wrangler.
And what does wrangling Ewoks entail?
Wrangling Ewoks entails, getting them into their suits and keeping them comfortable. We had special battery-powered blow dryers that had a heat setting, but they also had just an air setting. And so, like when the Ewoks were in their full costumes, if you've ever done creature work, you know that it gets incredibly hot in these costumes almost immediately. And so we would be giving them water, and then when they needed air, we would put these little mini hair dryers up to their mouths, and so you'd see these Ewoks suck on these hair dryers. It was kind of a weird sight. One of the funny things I remember from my first day on the set was there was an old Mexican guy doing the craft service and serving lunch out of a trailer there, and first meal, it was lobster and steak, and it was just like champagne. It was like the most amazing craft service lunch imaginable. And so I was like, wow, this is great. Like, this is what hitting the big time is like. And someone had to quickly correct me and go, no, you missed the whole thing where they hired a local caterer. The crew literally like mutinied and told the producers they were walking off the set if they didn't get a new caterer by Monday, and they brought up the best guy from Los Angeles who'd been doing it for like 30 years, and this is the big apology lunch to the crew.
Okay, so you missed the cheese and crackers section of the film, right? You mentioned you were in college at the time of this. Now, like a Lucas had a bunch of people in his graduating class or that he knew that went on to be successful in the industry. Whether it's Walter Murch and Randall Kleiser, who was his roommate, there was a lot of people that were successful, which is maybe because they helped each other out or just a fluke. Now, you likewise had a successful group of people that you went to school with. Your roommate was Fred Decker, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's right, the director of Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps, which have now become cult classics.
And you also knew, you went to school with Gregory Heinlein? Oh, wait, no, he made Heinlein. Gregory
Wyden.
Wyden, okay, now, and you also came up with the tentative title for Highlander, which was Sort of Bad.
Yeah, Sort of Bad. That was one of my inside jokes with Greg.
Which became, in the back of your debut film, was the title of a book that Roger Cobb wrote in House.
That's right.
Next
you're
up,
getting into the obscure trivia now.
Oh, I know I know my stuff. I know my Ethan Wiley tribute. Now, also, you were. I think next was Gremlins, or further, very soon after Return of the Jedi. You were working with Chris Walas, the effects master, who went on to direct The Fly 2. And how exactly did this Gremlins opportunity come about? Had you even been a puppeteer before this, or were they basically like you kind of convinced them, regardless of not having experience as a puppeteer?
Well, Chris Walas had designed the Ewoks and other creatures for Return of the Jedi. He did the melting Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He did the close-up head for Dragon Slayer, and he'd done all this amazing, amazing work while he was at Industrial Light Magic, and he wanted to start his own company and stay in Northern California. So I heard that he was looking for an assistant, just for this new startup company, and so I threw my hat in the ring, and we got along really well. And even though I didn't have a lot of experience, I think Chris liked my enthusiasm, and also it was kind of more like that we were interested in talking about films and the stories, and not just about the special effects. And that was one of the things I learned from Chris Walas was, using special effects to tell the story. And he later went on to, I left working with him and actually went to do House, but he won an Oscar for The Fly, which is a great example of where the special effects really meld with the character and the story. I did a lot of the puppeteering for Gizmo and also for Stripe. And there were multiple operators on every puppet. At that time, they were kind of the most state-of-the-art, most sophisticated animatronic puppets that had been done to that point, I guess. A lot of times when you're underneath the sets, you're in these really awkward positions, and it was very physically challenging, but it wasn't quite so horrible when Gizmo was sitting in Phoebe Cates' lap, and someone had to do the job,
From Gremlins opens the door. Oh, it somehow leads to House. Your roommate had a short treatment for a Twilight Zone-esque kind of episode, and you said, I want to take a crack at this, and somehow that led to the production on the second biggest grossing film in New World Pictures history. That's basically the story. The producer, Sean Cunningham, had done the Friday the 13th movies, had been very successful. Steve Miner had directed the 2 sequels up to that point, and he really fell in love with the House script, and he also had an interest in comedy. He later went on to direct a lot of the top television comedies like The Wonder Years and things like that. And so that kind of we shopped it around at the major studios. Nobody was interested. Sean funded the startup of the production with his own money, and then we got New Line on board, and it went on to become the biggest grossing film in their history, and then only eclipsed by Steve Miner's next movie, Soul Man. Which leads to House 2, the second story. Now, I'm assuming sometimes a franchise wants to get rid of the old blood and find somebody cheaper. And I was assuming that was the case.
That's about right.
I'm assuming that's the case with. I was trying to sugarcoat it the best I could, but he had worked with Sean Cunningham. Had worked with Steve Miner a number of times at that point. Steve's like, okay, I have to get minimum wage now, and you're like, screw you, man. You're not getting minimum wage. But there's, Ethan wrote this screenplay. What do you have to offer? How do you recall getting the job? How do you recall being, writer, director on the second one? Well,
the reality is Steve had been pretty successful with those Friday the 13th, and he was not hurting. And then, everyone did really well with House. And he really just wanted to move on and do some new kinds of material and work with new people. And so it was very amicable parting of the ways. And so that left a chair open for me to step in. And with my special effects background, that's really kind of what sealed the deal. Is not only did I have that experience to work with special effects, but I brought in Chris Walas to design creatures and Phil Tippett to do some, animation and called in some favors. And the one thing on House 2 though is that the decision to start the sequel came very late, and the script was written very quickly, and it was rushed into production, which I kind of regret. regret it afterward. But when the opportunity's there, you take it.
There was a bit of limbo for about 10 years where you were writing a lot of scripts, including scripts that were the basis of a bidding war, like Stranger in Leadville. Stranger in Leadville was considered strongly by Tim Burton. Was he attached at one point as a director?
He was, yeah. And at one point, I think Joe Dante was also attached. It was the story of aliens landing in the Colorado Rockies in the late 1800s. It was kind of a reimagining of the War of the Worlds if it had been a Western, or if H.G. Wells had written a Western, what would it look like? And that was kind of the concept behind the script. And later, many years later, a similar concept finally made it to the big screen, Cowboys and Aliens, which has a lot of similar elements. But that's one of the things you learn in Hollywood is that you can write a script, you can write a great script, you can write a hot script that gets a lot of attention and does great things for your career, but it doesn't necessarily make it to the big screen. And all writers have horror stories about their favorite script that still sits on a shelf.
You get hired for Spider-Man, which went through a plethora. What the hell? It went through a whole series of writers and directors. Tobe Hooper. And I was looking yesterday at the list of people who were writers and directors on it. There's like 5, 10 of each, including James Cameron. So you were, I think, 1989 or so, you were involved with writing of Spider-Man. And I believe you were given the restriction, could you write this without any of the supervillains? Could you invent your own supervillain? And
yeah.
What was your supervillain like?
Spider-Man was an interesting situation that there was a very complex legal situation with Spider-Man for many, many years. And at that point in time, the company only had the rights to the Spider-Man character and the storylines, but not it was a strange situation, not the villains. I don't know why. They had the right to use story elements, but not the villains. But for some legal reason, they didn't. So I just came up with a villain very much in the line of the other ones, and a mad doctor in a wheelchair who's trying to regenerate his legs through genetic experimentation.
Ultimately, you returned to the director's chair in Children of the Corn 5, where you were the first director to cast Eva Mendes. And what was the studio reaction to the casting of Eva Mendes? Powers that be?
Well, she was a total unknown, and she had never acted on film or tape or anything before. I don't know if I have the story exactly right, but she'd been kind of discovered walking down a street, and she was a student at Cal Fullerton or something, and or Northridge, and she came in and she was very rough. I mean, she didn't have a lot of experience or technique, but she had great personality and was beautiful, obviously, and I was really trying to get some ethnic diversity in the cast, and so I kind of fought to get her in the cast because the producers and the executives weren't that thrilled with her.
There's something about this villain that reminds me of you. Am I imagining things, or was that semi-conscious?
It was not semi-conscious. The villain in Brutal is a serial killer, but also a kindergarten teacher, and so really, I guess maybe I have the face of an everyman. Because that's what I was.
It's not so much that, but that actor sort of reminds me of you, in his delivery, a little bit like the way he looks and his speech pattern. There's something there.
Well, he's really brilliant and funny, so maybe that.
There's that too. How does a director of comedy, horror films, and horror wind up directing a family film about Christmas?
Because that's what the market demanded.
Oh, I see.
Actually,
that is the honest answer.
Well, I started my own production company in around 2006 with the idea of doing independent, low-budget films where I could actually get those films made, and they wouldn't sit on a shelf at a big studio.
Ultimately, you are taking on a film that is filmed in China, co-written by your longtime collaborator from years back, another master of the craft, Chris Walas. You guys are taking on the Yeren. in a film that you shot in China.
That's right.
How exactly did you wind up writing and directing Chinese Bigfoot?
That's a good question. I still don't quite know how that happened, but somehow it did. I went over to China with a monkey suit and went up into the mountains and made a film up there. It really was from Chris Whale's original kind of concept, because he's an expert in the world's myths and legends and things. When I had an opportunity to do something in China, he was the first phone call I made was to Chris to say, hey, what is there some kind of Chinese story you've always wanted to tell? Because I didn't have a Chinese story I wanted to tell. And he said the Yeren is the most interesting of all the world's Bigfoot legends.
You were the director of Silent Night and Zombie Night, film that featured, amongst other people, Felissa Rose. Who else was in that film?
Lou Temple from The Walking Dead.
Oh, I met him. Yeah, he's at all the events. Yeah, he's awesome.
And Vernon Wells from The Road Warrior.
Check this out. And the title is Jurassic Block.
Yeah, I was trying to look up some stuff. Please tell us a little bit about this, because the title alone has me very interested in it.
Jurassic Block is basically sorority girls versus dinosaurs in a prison.
That's awesome.
And Ray Wise agreed to be in this?
Oh my God!
Ray Wise,
yes.
I did turn it down.
Ray
on the
Wise.
premise alone.
That's very
I've been
cool.
waiting so long to work with Ray Wise. That's like a check off my bucket list. To work with Ray Wise.
And what was his reaction when you got him on the phone and you explained the premise? Was he like, I'm going to have to think about that? Or was he like,
I'll totally do this.
Sounds
No, I think he's like, so how much are you paying me? Actually, the idea originally was kind of like the Attack the Block meets the Raid Redemption. And it was supposed to be a bunch of
very, very
underrated.
cool, by the way. Nice.
Well, it didn't turn out that way, but that's what I intended. It was supposed to be like these, instead of British ghetto kids, American ghetto kids fighting dinosaurs on their turf. And so I told Anthony, I said, "Oh, we should make this movie, blah, 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 blah." And I didn't hear anything for a while, and then he came back to me, called me up and said, "Hey, bro, let's go over here. We're gonna have a talk about this movie." So I went down, we met at the bar. He's like, "We like this movie idea, but instead of underage, ghetto kids, can you make it sorority girls? And instead of like in a high rise, can you make it in a prison? Other than that, you can write and direct it." So I said, "Yeah, of course."
I'm in. I'm totally in, though. That's awesome.
You're living the dream, man.
I was very fortunate.
If you come up to me and describe that movie, I would say you had me at sorority girls versus dinosaurs.
GameReview.com.